Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Social Security is one of those things. It may be available. Doesn't mean it's necessarily in your best interest. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Sullivan.
Happy to have you along. Grant, man, I am really enjoying the show. Grant is one of our senior advisors, part of the Financial Enhancement Group. Angie is on vacation, celebrating her birthday. We'll not talk about how old she is, though she's the same age that I am. We'll leave that out of the mix. You know, it is amazing the number of people who just seem to be the same age. Anyhow, so we're talking about Social Security.
Yes.
We're talking about when to take it, when not to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm gonna let you run with this, and then I will intercede when I think that there's something that you missed.
All right.
I feel like I'm back in college again, where I'm teaching. 10 years ago, this guy showed up in one of my, God has a sense of humor. If you don't know that already, please be informed. If you get nothing else from this show, that God has a sense of humor, and so I wound up teaching at Purdue University for 14 semesters, and one of those semesters, Grant showed up in the class, the back of the class,
hoping to graduate,
and he stayed awake most of the time. And anyhow, it's my honor and my privilege to have taught him, and certainly to have him as part of our firm. But anyhow, we're talking about Social Security, and again, I would put this under the title of Things Change.
Absolutely.
So here you go.
Absolutely. So looking at Social Security, one of the most common things that we run into, Joe, is, and really when you're talking about distribution and planning for income, is do I take my Social Security now? And the next question you, again, bring to the table is, well, what's your required, what's your full retirement age? So when you're looking at your little green Social Security statements, they'll give your full retirement age based on your birthday. And then the other question, which, again, you have to be asked lightly with certain people in the room, but what is your age today? And then you begin that planning from there. But unfortunately, not just from our industry, and Joe is really big on Genesis, so I'm going to go kind of back and kind of talk through this. Most people believe that they want to take, or they're entitled to take, or they need to take Social Security at age 62. But most of the time, Joe, they can't answer why. It's like, oh, my neighbor said that, or oh, that's what my grandfather did, or my father did, but no one really understands the genesis of that. Why was age 62 essentially picked? And it comes largely down from pension funds. GM, big automaker here that was in Anderson and still is a little bit in Anderson, Indiana. When you got off the factory floor, they gave you a pension when you retired based on years of service and age and income, etc. And they gave you an increase in income. So you retired and you got a nice little bump until you turned age 62, at which the bump would disappear. And then you would go on Social Security, and that would essentially replace the bump they gave you. So it was in a way for pension programs to lower that out-of-pocket obligation, knowing Social Security was present. At least that's my belief. And so a lot of people from that period of time have pushed this message down the way that takes Social Security early, and now we hear from generations today, Social Security is going to go broke. I should take it as early as possible. And Joe, one thing you said in a meeting that I'll never forget years ago was that you taking Social Security, or me taking Social Security before that full retirement age, is not a $1,400, $1,500 monthly decision. It's a six-figure decision. We have tools and the ability to kind of walk through what that actually looks like for many of our families. But again, when you're taking Social Security early, what most people don't realize, and it's interesting watching their eyes light up in a bad way when we draw this on the board, is every year you take Social Security early, you're taking a negative 6% haircut on income. So if your full retirement age is 67 and you take it at 62, let's do some math.
Yeah.
Right? That's a big haircut.
It's a big number. So Andy can pull up the board so that people who are watching us streaming live can actually see this. It's designed, you have what's called an FRA, a full retirement age, right? For most of us, that's at age 67 right now. right? 62 is the first year you can take it. And Grant, as funny as this is, I actually even forgot. It's been so long since I've done this. Folks, I am an addict. You just have to understand. I mean, I have spent my entire life doing this. And what Grant just reminded you of, I actually forgot that when people retired before 62, they had a bump in their income that actually declined at 62. But very, very correct. 70 is the last year you can take it. So every year you take it before your full retirement age, you lose 6%. Every year you delay it, you gain 8%. And, in the book that I'm writing, one of the things that you have to do is to remember that retirement is all about income, not about assets, right? And so everybody always focuses on, well, how much is on my statement, right? And it's really, 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 truly about income, not about assets. And so I think Social Security dupes people into taking the money sooner because it's only formulated in income. If you knew what that basket of money was really worth, right? Mm-hmm. People probably wouldn't take it quite as early as they do. Right? I think we got a question.
We do. And this comes back. This is a question from our first segment, Joe. Jennifer asks, what ages do you have to take RMDs? Those required minimum distributions, thanks to the Secure Act, must begin the year you turn 72.
So there's two different things here, though, right? And this is going to create a lot of confusion for people. If it is your own IRA, or if it was your spouse's and the spouse's is deceased, right? So you have two different kinds of beneficiaries, actually three. You have spouse, non-spouse, and charitable, right? So charitable entities don't have to pay taxes. They can just simply cash the check. Non-spouses, that would be your kids, your sisters, nieces, nephews, whatever. They have to take that money out over a 10-year period of time. Nothing under the new law until the end of the 10th year, which is diametrically opposed to good planning. It's why I serve as trustee of a lot of IRAs, and why I will continue to, because people are not... when people do not understand those rules and regulations, bad things happen. I will also tell you a lot of trust documents are ill-prepared to deal with what is actually taking place inside of that world. You do not have to have your trust updated every year, but dadgummit, you do when something major changes. And, in my entire career in 1986, Reagan changed the most major change did not occur again until December of 2017. And then I'll be dadgummed if it didn't do it again in December of 2019. And then we have this crazy COVID business, right? So you've got three major tax code changes, and most trusts are simply outdated that are out there. That really need some good advice and guidance along the way.
Great point. And Joe, we just had another question come in for Social Security. And so it says, this is from Cindy, most Social Security answers seem to be for single filing individuals. What about the scenario of one spouse who made significantly less than the other spouse? How should this couple approach the Social Security question, provided the money is not needed? Well, that's a mouthful.
So
a lot to break down here.
If you were born after January 1st of 1954, it becomes far less of an equation than what it used to be. And so, again, there's a lot of strategies that are out there. Grant makes fun of me for this, but I spent a lot of time trying to teach them that Google is data sensitive, not date sensitive. All right, so I've written hundreds. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. Hundreds of articles on Roth conversions over my career. Because it's a big deal. And a lot of them were deemed irrelevant after the 2017 tax code. Or certainly after the CARES Act that was passed, or the Secure Act, rather, that was passed. But if you go search for Roth conversions or Roth contributions, you're very likely to find something that I wrote. You're going to think, well, that guy knows what he's talking about. At least I hope you feel that way. But it's going to be bad data because it was written under a previous tax code. And it's why we're so reticent to write books. It's hard to write something that is able to live up to a changing world that we're in, right? And so anyhow, it's if you're born after January 1st of 1954, believe it or not, it actually is January 1st. So if you're born on the 2nd, things changed. If you're born on the 1st, you're okay. But that rule is pretty much out in terms of you being able to file and suspend and take your spouse's income, which is what that old strategy was. So please be wary of that.
And again, to add to that as well, as Joe stated, really don't make this decision in a vacuum, please. Talk to an advisor, have them run numbers, sit down, have this conversation. We find that too many people make this decision without getting all the data on the table. And more importantly, after you make a Social Security decision, after 12 months, you can't undo it.
And talk to somebody who has your interest in mind. So I'm going to go on a soapbox for the next minute and 7 seconds, right? So I get paid to manage money. We have $600 million as of the time of this recording that we manage. And so the idea that I would try to get you to spend money is adverse to my business plan because I try to collect assets, gather assets. But that's exactly what we try to do. We don't teach people to hoard. We want you to be able to use your money, right? So the natural structure for Wall Street is to tell you to delay taking money out of your accounts and accelerate using Social Security because that's money that's coming out of the government's pocket, not out of yours. We will do precisely the opposite. Assuming you are in good health, we will teach you to use money out of your account at the lowest possible tax bracket and delay Social Security because of that 8% increase. We fight our industry all the time. I probably will to the day I die, and when it's Grant's term, he will too. Hey, you're listening to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark, along with Grant Sullivan. 800-928-4001. We'll take a break.